Welcome to AMA Edgewise. I'm Dave Summers. AMA Edgewise is brought to you by the American Management Association. Our guest today is Rajeev Peshawaria, CEO of the ICLIF Leadership and Governance Center, based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. He has extensive global experience in leadership development and coaching senior management teams in their efforts to streamline business strategy, organizational architecture, and culture. He has been the Global Chief Learning Officer of Morgan Stanley and the Coca-Cola Company and held senior positions at American Express, HSBC, and Goldman Sachs for over 22 years prior to joining ICLIF. He earned an MBA from Webster University, Vienna, Austria, and a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Bombay, India. He's author of the new book, Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, the 3 essential principles you need to become an extraordinary leader. Rajeev, welcome to Edgewise.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Well, let's go right to the heart of the matter. What is your definition of leadership?
Before you can hope to lead an enterprise, you have to understand yourself, and you have to be able to lead yourself. I define leadership as the art of harnessing human energy towards the creation of a better future. But the moment you articulate your vision of a better future, 1,000 people tell you in a million ways why that is a bad idea and why you will fail. You get all kinds of obstacles and all kinds of resistance the moment you start working towards building a better future.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying thing that you need to face all that resistance is energy. Whether you're leading yourself, a small team of people, or a whole enterprise, it's all about managing first your own energy and then the energy of those around you.
And how do you do that?
A lot of people would think that a big bonus energizes people. A lot of people think that a threat or the avoidance of pain would energize somebody into action. Yes, those are sources of energy, but they are finite sources of energy. The only limitless source of energy at the personal level is clarity on 2 things. 1, your purpose, the results you want to create, and 2, values, how you're going to go about creating them. What will you do when you're tested? Look at any favorite leader that you have, and you'll find that whenever they felt demoralized in their quest for a better future, they reminded themselves of their purpose and of their values, and they came back even bigger. Classic example is Mahatma Gandhi. They put him in jail, they beat him up, they did all kinds of things to him, but he re-energized himself by imagining a free country, a world where everybody was treated with respect and dignity. And then when he was tested, he knew his biggest value was nonviolence. And that told him what to do and what not to do in the toughest of circumstances. So clarity of purpose and values are the only 2 authentic and limitless sources of personal energy.
Now, in the book, you also talk about team leadership.
I think what's changed in the world today compared to even a few years ago is the world has become far too complex for any one person to have all the answers. So if you want to create a better future, the best leaders know they cannot do it alone. They need to enlist a few people for the journey, make it shared purpose, and together create a better future.
Mm-hmm.
The best leaders that I have worked with treat their direct reports as their co-leaders rather than just somebody who takes instructions from them. The old command and control leader told his direct reports, this is your job, this is your job. Today's leader, if he or she wants to create a better future, has to talk in terms of co-leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to share both authority and responsibility, even though technically these people report to you.
Now, what is enterprise leadership?
Enterprise leadership is what the CEO and the senior leadership team, in other words, the co-leaders, do together to galvanize the rest of the organization so that the energy of thousands of people is moving in the same direction.
Right.
You see 2 kinds of organizations. One where energy is leaking, where there's politics, there's silo issues, there's turf issues, power plays, and a lot of energy is wasted in negative pursuit. Whereas there are organizations where most of the energy is going towards one direction, and it's the latter type of organization that achieves its full potential.
Rajeev, how can leaders make themselves an enterprise leader?
To be an enterprise leader, you have to make a mental transition from I to we. It's a mindset change. What happens is somebody goes to a great school, does very well, gets into a good college. They do very well in college and they get their dream job. And then for many years in their job, even if they're changing jobs, they work extremely hard because they have that work ethic. And then they get promoted and ultimately they get to an enterprise level position. If you choose to use the same strategy of personal success that has brought you up to here, that's going to make you fail. Because now the rule of the game is not to produce results yourself. It is to create conditions so that other people can produce results successfully.
Right.
You have to be comfortable sharing leadership, hence the co-leader concept, and be prepared that you're going to create those conditions in which other people are going to succeed, and you might not even get the credit for it sometimes.
Sure.
3 out of 4 people, according to research, are not able to make that transition. And that's when their careers begin to derail. They're not able to let go.
Okay. So how can they make themselves most effective as enterprise leaders?
Once you've made this transition from I to we and you're comfortable about creating conditions for other people's success, the other big question is, how do you use your time? If your life is like any other busy executive, you get up in the morning at 6 o'clock, you get to your first breakfast meeting at 7:30. You finish the breakfast meeting, you get to work, and you've got meetings all the way through lunch. In between meetings, people are waiting outside your office to say, give me 5 minutes, I need to get something done. You're lucky if your assistant gives you lunch, and I could go on till you finally get in your car to go home at 10 o'clock at night after your dinner meeting, and you're exhausted, and there's 300 Blackberries waiting for you.
Of course.
To be an effective enterprise leader, how should you use your time? What I found in my research is that those leadership teams that focus proactively on what I call the 3 pillars of sustainable success do the best possible job for the enterprise as a whole. To make it easy to remember, I call those 3 pillars the brains, bones, and nerves of an organization. The brains refers to the vision and strategy of the organization. The bones is the organizational architecture. Do you have the right people in the right place? Do you have the right processes that encourage desired performance? Do you have the right organizational structure? And finally, the nerves is the culture of the organization. So the key is to spend most of your time proactively shaping those 3 levers and delegate almost everything else.
And why do you feel that way? Could you expand on that?
Definitely. Here's what's different. Until a few years ago, these 3 things used to be periodic activities. You could do strategy once in 3 years. They used to say, plan the work and work the plan. Those days are over. Today, you have to think about strategy every month, if not every quarter. Organizational construct. Only you and the leadership team can see when the organization is getting too complex and too siloed, and you can make decisions as to where to move resources. Otherwise, turf wars will never end.
Right.
And culture. The biggest mistake CEOs make is delegating the work of culture to HR. I have nothing against human resources. They're very capable people, but you should know how to use them. They can be great partners, but you don't delegate things like corporate culture to HR. The leaders shape the culture of the organization.
All right, you said they shape the culture. So the culture is actually a reflection of them.
It absolutely is. And that's what many leaders don't realize, unfortunately. Human beings are hierarchical. From the moment we are born and as little kids, even before we learn how to walk and talk, we quickly realize what makes our parents happy, and we try to emulate that behavior to win their approval. When we grow older, we don't stop. The same thing is true in the office. So I don't believe in the concept of a flat organization. We are hierarchical. Employees are looking towards their leaders for clues of what the culture is. I have seen, unfortunately, many leaders that talk about company values and then don't do those things themselves. Well, your actions speak louder than your words. People take clues from what you do, not from what you say.
Absolutely. Lead by example.
Yes. The other thing about culture is consultants will tell you that it takes many, many years to change corporate culture. The larger the organization, the harder it is. 7, 9, 10 years is what they tell you.
And what is your response to that?
I believe you can change culture in less than 2 years if the senior leadership team is willing to talk with their actions every day rather than just with their words. If you also align your reward systems a little bit with your cultural philosophy, you've done it in less than 2 years.
Rajeev, you mentioned 3 major principles. Is one more important than the other?
I don't believe one is more important than the other, but I do believe that if you don't have the first one, it's difficult to get to the second and the third. All 3 principles have to do with energy. The first one is to find your own energy. That comes from clarity of purpose and clarity of values. Once you've found your own energy, then you find people who you enlist as your co-leaders and align their energy towards shared purpose. And then finally, by shaping the brains, bones, and nerves, you align the energy of thousands of people towards that same shared purpose.
And it's any one of the brains, bones, and nerves more important than the others?
Yes. If there's one that's more important, it would be the brain. If you don't have the brain right, you can't have the bones right and you can't have the nerves right, because the bones and nerves are the execution, whereas the brain is the direction. Having said that, things fail not because people don't have the right strategy. It's because they don't have the right execution, which means the bones and the nerves are not right.
Okay.
But you cannot do bones and nerves until you have the brain right. So it's a difficult question to answer in that sense.
Now, you've worked for numerous companies. Can you share with us a story about the three principles or the entire process?
There are brilliances I have seen in different companies of different principles. Rarely do you see all three principles running at the same time. One of the companies that comes close to all of them is American Express, when Harvey Golub was the CEO. They were very clear with brains, bones, and nerves.
And what happened there?
I was an entry-level employee working in India at that time. Harvey Golub had just taken over as CEO, and he was trying to reinvent the company. And he and his team defined the company's mission and vision in one sentence: to be the world's most respected service brand. And he explained every word of that sentence. What does it mean, respect? What does it mean, service? And talking about the bones and nerves, they actually created an organization that was built around the idea of service and earning respect with service. They spent inordinate amounts of money and effort in training every single employee on what does service mean. So if somebody is stuck in a strange country and they've lost their passport and their money and they call the 1-800 line, the person who picks up the phone doesn't need permission to help you out, no matter what it costs the company, because they're trained like that. And then in terms of nerves, this whole culture around leadership and around living the company values, 50% of every employee's bonus depended on the G rating, which stood for goals. And the other 50% depended on our L rating, which stood for leadership. It wasn't enough to just achieve your business goals. It was extremely important that you lived the leadership values of the company. There was no doubt in anybody's mind that that's important.
Is there something about companies that signals right away that they don't have enterprise leadership?
Yes, it's very easy to tell. I often work with senior leadership teams, helping them with shaping the brains, bones, and nerves. The first meeting with the entire leadership team is in the room, just observing them and the way they interact with each other, we can tell whether this is indeed a group of co-leaders or a bunch of individuals reporting to one CEO. Big difference. And then we do the brains, bones, and nerves survey. We ask employees, do you understand the strategy? Do you feel like we have the right organization, the right culture? We can almost predict the scores based on that one meeting, because the rest of the organization is always an extended image of what's happening in the senior management room.
And in your book, you offer some insights into being able to look at an organization and determine if it's in trouble or could be in trouble.
Absolutely. The brains, bones, and nerves survey takes less than 10 minutes to fill out. It's only 15 items, 5 each on brains, bones, and nerves. And you can plot the results on one page. It gives you a very good picture of whether the actions of the leadership team as leaders are working or not working. So if the senior leadership team says, yes, we have set a very compelling strategy, but people down the line say, no, they don't see it, they haven't done it, or haven't done it well. A leader who managed 20,000 people around the world and hired me once as a consultant said, I'm very frustrated. I said, why? She says, we've spent 2 weeks in this conference room, my management team and I, and we've developed a business plan and a strategy that we sent out to all employees, including all the workings and everything. And yet when I talk to people 2 or 3 levels below, they say they don't understand it. I said, show me what you sent. And she showed me a binder which was 3 inches thick. I said, well, that's your problem, without even opening it. You have to be able to articulate strategy in 1 or 2 pages in a way that not only creates understanding, but also acceptance from the employees. Once you've got that acceptance and that understanding, energy is going to flow in the right direction. 3-inch binders don't do it.
We've been talking to Rajeev Peshawaria, CEO of the ASB-Iclif Leadership and Governance Center. The website is www.iclif.org. He's author of the new book, Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders, published by Simon & Schuster. Rajeev, thanks for being with us on Edgewise today.
Thank you for having me.